Two black girls walked into their new school, quiet, composed. No one knew they were black belt fighters. And when cornered, they didn't retreat. They led. They didn't see girls. They saw color. That's how it started. Two black girls standing at the edge of a bleached-out hallway in a school that hadn't changed since 1964. Except now the signs of segregation were invisible. Embedded in locker whispers and lunch table silences, Dana and Daria wore the skin of their ancestors, deep brown like the soil of Georgia, and for that, they were marked. The moment they walked in, they were labeled outsider, threat, other. Nobody asked their names. Nobody wanted to. At Ridgefield Junior High, names didn't matter when skin spoke first. But what nobody knew, not the boys with slurs tucked in their teeth, not the teacher who flinched when Dana raised her hand, was that these girls came with a legacy, with fists that knew balance before they knew fear, with a grandfather who taught them that dignity doesn't whisper, it stands. This wasn't just another school year. This was a reckoning. The Bronx in winter doesn't welcome you. It stares. The building's tall, rust-edged, sun-starved stand like judges, and the wind doesn't whisper, it interrogates. The day Dana and Daria arrived, the sky was the color of a closing door, thick, gray, unmoving, and everything about the air felt like a dare. The twins stepped out of the old Buick like they had stepped onto a stage they didn't ask for. Their mother turned off the engine and gripped the steering wheel as if it held her together. "Walk like you know who you are," she said softly. "Even if they never will." They didn't respond. They didn't need to. The silence between them was fluent. Dana's hand found the edge of her coat. Daria adjusted her backpack. They had done this before, in Georgia, in Texas, in Florida, but this time it felt different. This wasn't just a new school. It was a test of survival written in a language no one would teach them to speak. The building ahead, PS 142, loomed like it had seen too much and remembered everything. A group of students laughed near the entrance, laughter, the sharp kind, the kind that turns heads and checks skin tone before offering space. Dana and Daria stepped forward, shoulders back, chins steady. They knew this choreography. Be proud but not defiant. Be visible but not loud. Not too much of anything. Inside, the heat from the radiators clashed with the cold in their coats. Fluorescent lights buzzed like static. A boy with earbuds stared too long. A teacher nodded too quickly. It had begun. Outside, their mother remained in the car longer than necessary. She watched the doors close behind her daughters, just as a soldier might watch a gate shut on a battlefield. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. "Please," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Please let them come home whole." The engine turned over. The Buick pulled away, but something stayed behind, hovering in the cold, unseen. Hope, fragile, defiant, waiting to be tested. The hallway swallowed them whole. Lockers stretched like metal ribs. The floor glossy but uneven, echoing every step with just enough reverb to make you feel exposed. Dana and Daria moved in sync, not out of habit but necessity. It was how they survived. New places, twin shadows, calculated presence. Not invisible, just unreadable. A girl dropped a pencil and didn't say thank you when Dana picked it up. A group of boys snickered as Daria passed, one whispering loud enough to be heard but vague enough to be deniable. The air smelled like cheap disinfectant and cafeteria grease. Everything was loud in a quiet way. The front office had given them printed schedules, still warm from the copier. Dana folded hers into neat thirds. Daria stuffed hers into the back pocket of her jeans. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. A cluster of students leaned near the water fountain, watching them like something unexpected on a TV screen. One girl nudged another, laughing. Dana caught the words southern drawl and attitude before they vanished into coughs. She didn't flinch. She didn't need to. But something tightened behind her eyes. In homeroom, the seats were assigned. Daria landed near the back, beside a window with cracked plastic blinds. Dana sat 2 rows ahead, near a bulletin board with peeling edges and slogans like "Kindness Counts," tacked up in crooked letters. A teacher named Miss Bloom greeted them, with the brittle enthusiasm of someone trying too hard. Welcome. You're from Georgia, is it? Atlanta, Dana replied. Big change, Miss Bloom chirped, but you'll adjust. It wasn't a question. It was a directive. Lauren entered 3 minutes late, without offering an apology. She paused when she saw the twins, eyes narrowing just slightly. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes, and slid into her seat like she owned the oxygen in the room. From behind, Daria stared at the back of Lauren's head, already feeling the edges of a storm forming. They had walked into places like this before, but this time, something in the air said, this place might fight back harder. And they were ready. Lunchtime wasn't about food. It was about territory. Tables in the cafeteria weren't assigned, but everyone knew where they belonged. The athletes clustered near the back doors, where they could sneak in protein shakes and earbuds. The theater kids claimed the corner near the vending machines. The quiet kids, those who didn't fit anywhere, sat by the windows, pretending the sunlight made them invisible. Dana and Daria stood at the edge of the room, holding trays of lukewarm spaghetti and mystery meat. They scanned the tables, not for welcome, but for space. They chose an empty table, neutral ground, not a claim, not a challenge. Still, it didn't go unnoticed. Lauren walked by with her entourage, 3 girls who mirrored her like echoes. Glossy lips, perfect posture, weaponized giggles. She dropped a napkin on their table. Thought you'd want to wipe the South off your face, she said sweetly, not even pausing. The girls behind her laughed like a cue had been given. Dana reached for the napkin, folded it slowly, and placed it in the trash. Daria didn't move. Her eyes followed Lauren, calm and unreadable. What just happened? Asked a girl nearby, whispering. What always happens, said someone else, not looking up. They ate in silence. Not because they were afraid, but because silence, in the right hands, was power. Words could be twisted, misquoted. Silence made people uncomfortable in ways noise never could. A few tables away, a boy with wire-framed glasses and a tablet glanced at them. He didn't smile, just nodded once, like an acknowledgement between quiet warriors. They didn't nod back, but they noticed. Halfway through lunch, a grape rolled across the table. Dana looked up. A boy at another table smirked, winked, and turned away. Daria picked up the grape and rolled it back harder. It landed in his mashed potatoes. His smirk disappeared. No teachers noticed. Or maybe they did and decided not to. Dana leaned in slightly. It's starting. Daria's reply was almost inaudible. Let it. They had faced worse. But this place had sharp edges and smiling mouths, a different kind of battlefield. And lunch was only the beginning. That afternoon, their schedule led them to gym class. The locker room smelled of bleach and half-scrubbed memories. Dana and Daria found a corner bench away from the others. The girls here talked fast and laughed louder, tossing shoes and secrets with equal casualness. None of it included the twins. Daria changed quickly, her movements efficient, practiced. Dana hesitated only a second before pulling on her gym shirt. She could feel eyes on her calculating, appraising. She didn't flinch. Y'all always match? A voice called across the room. It was Lauren. The question dripped with mockery, wrapped in the faux curiosity that racists had perfected. Her friends giggled. One mimicked the way Daria tied her shoes. Another pulled her curls into a messy bun and said, "Look at me, I'm twin number 2. Dana met her sister's eyes. One heartbeat. One signal. They turned away. In the gym, the class lined up for relay drills. Mr. Caswell, the coach, handed out cones and barely glanced their way. Pair up, he barked. No one moved toward the twins, so they paired with each other. As they sprinted, their bodies fell into rhythm, the same they'd practiced in backyards and dusty garages with Papa Joe. They were efficient, fluid, and silent. They didn't chase the fastest time. They chased precision, no wasted motion, no apology. After the third lap, Coach Caswell blew his whistle. Twins, nice form, he muttered, almost surprised. Lauren raised a brow. Maybe they should teach us how to run from things, she said, just loud enough. Dana stopped walking. Daria did not. Dana turned slowly. Say that again? Her voice wasn't loud, but it sliced the air. Lauren smirked. Nothing. That was the game. Always. Nothing. The class stayed silent. Back in the locker room, someone had written, "Go home" on Dana's locker with a dry erase marker. Daria wiped it off without a word. It wasn't new. It wasn't clever. But it was the Bronx. And it was only day one. And still, as they walked out of the gym, neither of them bent. They didn't speak of the writing. They didn't need to. The war was being declared in whispers, but they spoke fluently. That evening, the apartment echoed with the clinks of silverware and the hum of the radiator. Their mother stirred a pot of gumbo with practiced care, the scent of shrimp, sausage, and bay leaves softening the cold that clung to the walls of the Bronx. Daria peeled carrots without looking up. Dana watched the steam rise like signals no one could read. "How was your first day?" their mother asked. Dana glanced at Daria. "Fine." Daria shrugged. "Same as always." Their mother didn't press. She just nodded, eyes on the stovetop, as if stirring the broth long enough could flavor away whatever truth they weren't saying. After dinner, they retreated to their shared bedroom. The walls were still bare, save for a single taped photo of Papa Joe holding their hands on a beach in Savannah. The light from the street lamps outside cast long shadows across the floor. Dana sat cross-legged on the bed, notebook open but untouched. "They're watching us," she said. "Let them," Daria replied, brushing lotion into her hands. "Let them learn something. But they don't want to learn. They want to see us fold. Or flare." Daria looked up. "So we do neither." That was the answer. Not retreat. Not explode. Endure. Observe. Prepare. They had learned that from Papa Joe's lessons, not just in martial arts, but in life. Power wasn't only about strength. It was about presence. The art of moving through hostility with stillness so sharp it cut through noise. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, layered beneath the sounds of car horns and city murmurs. Dana got up and pulled the curtains shut. She turned back to her sister. "You think we'll have to fight?" Daria didn't answer right away. Then, evenly, "Only if the second punch is ours." Dana nodded. That line again. That code. They wouldn't be the first to hit. But if the moment came, they'd be ready. They always were. Downstairs, their mother hummed an old hymn under her breath. And upstairs, the twins lay side by side, staring at the ceiling, listening to a city that never stopped speaking, even when no one was listening. Tomorrow would come, and they would meet it on their feet. The next morning, the hallways felt different. Not louder, not busier, just tighter. Like the walls themselves had leaned in overnight, holding their breath. Eyes followed Dana and Daria with more calculation now. Not the wide-eyed curiosity of yesterday, but the sharpened edge of conclusion. Word had spread, not about any one thing, not officially. But in middle school, truth didn't need formality. It traveled through whispers, glances, and half-truths traded over lockers, and beneath desks a smirk from a stranger. A nudge passed between girls with identical ponytails. Dana felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders before the first bell rang. In English class, Miss Bloom welcomed them with a smile that was just a little too bright. "Today we'll be reading Langston Hughes," she said, like that might balance the room. It didn't. A boy in the front row coughed something under his breath. Another laughed. Daria didn't turn, but she stiffened, shoulders squared, spine tall. Dana's pen moved across the margin of her notebook. Same play, new theater. After class, as they gathered their books, a girl bumped Daria's elbow with unnecessary force. "Oops," she said, not even slowing down. Dana caught up to her sister in the hallway. "You okay?" Daria exhaled slowly. "Yeah, it's just beginning, isn't it?" Dana didn't answer. She didn't need to. At their locker, someone had scrawled a word in pencil. Loudmouths. It wasn't etched deep, just enough to be read, just enough to say, "We see you. We don't want to." Dana rubbed it away with her sleeve. Daria watched the eraser marks fade. "They want us quiet," Daria said. "They want us gone," Dana replied. But they didn't leave. They shut the locker, slung their backpacks on their shoulders, and walked into second period without missing a beat, because walls could whisper all they wanted. The twins had learned how to listen without losing themselves. By lunch, the storm had quieted, but not calm. The cafeteria hummed with that artificial stillness that cities often experience before a thunderstorm. Conversations were muted when the twins walked in. Not abruptly, just gradually. It's as if someone turned the volume down without asking. Dana and Daria made their way to the same empty table as the day before. It was still unclaimed, still neutral, but now it felt more like exile than choice. Lauren sat 2 tables away, flanked by her usual entourage. Her laughter was exaggerated now, every gesture aimed sideways. One of the girls leaned toward another and whispered something while looking straight at Dana. Then they all laughed again. It was too choreographed to be spontaneous. Daria reached for her milk carton, but her fingers paused midair. Someone was watching. From 3 tables away, a girl in a dark hoodie with sleeves pulled over her hands stared not with judgment but something quieter. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her chipped black nail polish caught the light as she scribbled something in the margins of a book. Dana noticed the girl's eyes. Tired, yes, but not dull. Curious. Awake. Their gaze held for a moment. Then the girl stood. She walked past the twins' table without a word, but as she did, she slipped something under Daria's tray. A folded piece of notebook paper. They waited until she was gone before opening it. Written in small, careful letters. They tried with me, too. It doesn't stop unless someone makes it. On the back, 2 fists were drawn, side by side, small but steady. Dana stared at the note, then looked at Daria. For the first time since arriving, something cracked in the tension, a fracture not from pressure, but from recognition. They tried with me, too. It wasn't a rescue. It wasn't an alliance. But it was a signal. And sometimes, that's where resistance begins, with one quiet voice reaching out in a sea of silence. The call came during the 3rd period. Over the intercom. Dana and Daria Ellison, please report to the principal's office. The room fell silent. Heads turned not dramatically, but enough. Enough to let the twins know the audience was watching. Dana tucked her notebook into her bag with precision. Daria didn't speak. The walk to the office felt longer than it should have, each step echoing between lockers like footsteps in a cathedral. Mrs. Halpin's office smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and unease. She sat behind her desk with her hands clasped, posture perfect. Her smile was polished, almost brittle. Girls, she began, please, have a seat. Today's Saturday. I've heard there was an incident in the cafeteria, she said, flipping through papers that didn't matter. Nothing formal, of course, but some students have expressed discomfort. Dana raised an eyebrow. Discomfort? Mrs. Halpern hesitated. It seems your presence, Island, being perceived as confrontational. Daria's voice was flat. We ate lunch, yes, but it's about perception. And sometimes, perception becomes reality. There it was, the coded warning, the subtle demand for compliance without confrontation, for visibility without disruption. Dana leaned forward. Are we in trouble? No, the principal said quickly. Just a conversation. We want everyone to feel safe here. Daria met her gaze. Do you want us to feel safe? Mrs. Halpin blinked, caught for a second too long. We simply want peace, she replied. Outside the office, the twins didn't speak until they reached the stairwell. Dana finally exhaled. She wants us quieter. She wants us invisible, Daria replied. They stood for a moment at the landing, watching first-year students scramble to class, laughter bouncing down the steps. She doesn't even know what she asked for, Dana whispered. No, Daria said, but we do. They descended the stairs, each step deliberate. The war here wasn't loud. It didn't wear a uniform, but it was real, and it was listening. The change wasn't confined to the school. At the corner bodega, the man behind the register, who once greeted them with a nod, now watched too closely as Dana paid for a bottle of juice. His eyes lingered on their hands, not their faces. His thank you came late and thin, on their block. A neighbor who used to wave from her porch now seemed to find sudden reason to go inside when the girls passed. The streets of the Bronx had always held tension. Sirens and shadows were nothing new, but now there was a different edge to it, one that followed them home. That Sunday, at church, the pastor's sermon delicately skirted the topic of young people needing guidance. After the service, he pulled their parents aside with a rehearsed smile. "We've heard some things from the school," he said gently. "Nothing specific, of course, just concern." Their father nodded politely, but Dana caught the flicker in his eyes one she had seen in the dojo. Not anger, focus. Back at home, their mother stirred sweet tea with too much force. "They don't want to say it plain," she muttered, "but they mean our girls are the problem." "Then they've never seen our girls handle problems," their father replied, quiet but sure. That night, Dana stared out the window at the darkened street. Cars rolled by, slow and unaware. Daria sat on the floor, stretching, breath steady. "We're not safe here either, are we?" Dana asked. "No," Daria said. "But we're not powerless either." The words sat between them, not as comfort, but as conviction. From her backpack, Dana pulled out the note from Kay again. "Read it slowly." They weren't alone. Not really. And if the world wouldn't welcome their strength, maybe it needed to feel it. Not violently, just clearly. Monday morning came wrapped in frost. The windows of the school bus were fogged, and silence hung like breath held too long. Dana and Daria didn't speak on the ride. They didn't need to. Their silence wasn't emptiness, it was preparation. At school, Kay passed by them in the hallway. No words, just a glance and a nod. That was enough. Between the third and fourth period, Aiden found them at their lockers. He looked more nervous than usual, the sleeves of his hoodie twisted in his fingers. He handed Dana a small USB drive. "It's not much," he said, "but it's enough." "What is it?" Daria asked. "Clips from the cafeteria and the locker room. Lauren, her crew, the slurs, the vandalism. I patched it together from the Wi-Fi cams. No sound, but it's there." Dana stared at it, then slid it into her pocket like it was a seed. "We're not showing it yet," Daria said. Aiden looked confused. "Why not?" "Because right now, they call it drama," Dana answered. "But if we wait, make them see who's been watching, it becomes something else." They met off to school in the gym. Not to train. Not yet. This was something different. A plan. They sketched it out on old poster board from the art room. Timelines, names, safe allies, weak points. They didn't talk about revenge. They spoke about visibility, protection, community. "Everyone thinks we're just reacting," Dana said. "But what if we leave?" Daria nodded. "Not fists. Not yet. Just presence." And so it began, not with noise, but with a flyer. They drafted it together. After-school self-defense workshop. No belts. No fees. No egos. Just movement. At the bottom, in small print, for anyone who's ever felt small. That night, Dana couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her heart oddly calm. Not because things had gotten better, but because, for the first time, she knew they were about to. The gym was never silent. Even when empty, it hummed with the ghosts of sneakers squeaking, whistles echoing, breath held in the seconds before a shot. But that afternoon it carried a different sound, quiet determination. Dana and Daria stood in the center of the mats, faces steady. Around them, 10 students gathered, awkward, unsure, but present. Some shifted nervously. One girl fidgeted with her sleeves. A boy in the back wore bruises he hadn't earned in gym class. No one spoke at first. Then Dana stepped forward. "We're not here to fight people," she said calmly. "We're here to fight silence." Daria followed. "You don't have to know how to throw a punch, just how to stand. That's enough." A few nodded. One girl wiped her eyes. Another tightened her shoelaces like it meant something. They began simply. Breathing. Grounding. How to center yourself in a world that tries to knock you off balance. No fancy moves. Just stance. Just breathe. Aiden watched from the edge, notebook in hand, mapping everything with quiet precision. Kay leaned against the far wall, arms folded. She wasn't participating yet, but she was there. By the end of the hour, the students had moved differently. Not faster, not stronger, just more like they had a right to the space they stood in. Afterward, as the others trickled out, one boy stayed behind. He was small, barely fifth grade height, though they knew he was in eighth grade. "My name's Trevor," he said, eyes not quite meeting theirs. "My brother says boys don't need this stuff." Daria crouched to meet his gaze. "Sometimes boys need it more." He nodded, once a whisper of a smile. Outside, the city moved on, trains rumbling, horns blaring, life pretending not to notice what was rising inside that school. But something had started. Not a riot, not a rebellion. A second line, a quieter parade of strength, winding just behind the noise, gathering its breath, and it would not be ignored for long. Word spread fast, not through announcements, but through hallways and whispers, through passing glances and notebooks scribbled with times and room numbers. By the third session, 15 students showed up. By the fifth, it was 30. Not all stayed. Some watched, unsure, but they came. Mr. Harper was the first adult to step in without stepping over the line. He taught social studies and had a slow, deliberate way of speaking that made students lean in without realizing it. That Wednesday, he appeared at the gym door, arms crossed, watching. No clipboard, no correction, just an observation. After class, he approached Dana and Daria as they rolled up mats. "You two are doing something real," he said. "I hope you know that." Dana looked up, wary. "We're not breaking any rules." "Didn't say you were," he replied, smiling faintly. "Just letting you know I see it. And others will too." By Friday, a member of the school board stopped by. Not officially, just checking in on after-school engagement, as she put it. But her heels clicked with purpose, and her eyes scanned every corner of the gym like she was measuring something she didn't quite understand. Daria watched her, calm and unbothered. Dana kept teaching. The rhythm never broke. In the background, Aiden filmed clips not for proof now, but for the record, for legacy. Kay had started designing more than patches. She was drafting a website, something they could share, something that couldn't be erased with a locker scratch or a passing slur. Later that night, their mother found the flyer folded neatly on the kitchen table. She read every word twice, then looked at her daughters. "Do you know what you're building?" she asked. Daria answered without blinking. "Not yet, but we know what we're tearing down." Outside, the city howled like it always did. But inside their small apartment, something steadier held its ground. Conviction, and it was louder than noise. Aiden didn't usually talk much during the sessions. He stayed near the edges, adjusting a camera here, a tripod there. But that afternoon, as the last student left and Dana wiped down the mats, he stepped forward. "There's this kid," he said quietly. "He's in 7th grade, Jordan. He has a speech delay, and people mess with him. They think he doesn't get it, but he does." Daria paused, lowering her towel. "Bring him," Aiden nodded. "He won't come unless someone he trusts is here." "Then stay close," Dana said. "That's all it takes." The next day, Jordan stood in the doorway of the gym. He didn't move. Small, wiry, one sleeve tugged longer than the other, but his eyes scanned the room like he'd memorized it already. Dana walked over, not with a smile, but with a steady pace. "You don't have to do anything," she said. "Just watch, if you want." Jordan didn't speak, just nodded once. He stayed the entire session, unmoving and silent, yet absorbing everything. Ultimately, he surprised them. He bowed, not because he had to, because it meant something. Later, Aiden found Dana outside, waiting for the bus. "You know what Jordan said after class?" he asked. Dana raised an eyebrow. "He said he didn't feel weird here. Said it felt like a place where people don't expect you to be anyone else." Dana looked out toward the traffic, the sound of sirens in the distance. "That's exactly what it is," she murmured. That evening, the twins updated the group's mission statement written in plain Sharpie on the back of an old science fair board. Not just defense, not just strength, belonging, for everyone. And slowly, the second line grew not with banners or slogans, but with each quiet yes, each hesitant step onto a mat, each nod of solidarity. It was no longer just Dana and Daria's fight. It was becoming something bigger, a movement of the misfit, the quiet, the unseen, and they were learning to stand together. Mr. Ramirez had taught gym at PS 142 for 17 years. He was the kind of teacher who remembered names, even when kids tried to forget themselves. He believed in effort more than talent, and always left his office door open, literally and otherwise. That Thursday, he stayed after hours, leaning against the wall of the gym, arms crossed, watching the twins guide a new warm-up drill. He didn't say anything at first. He just observed the quiet discipline, the soft corrections, the way kids started walking taller by the end of the hour. After the session, he approached them while they were rolling up mats. "Mind if I ask what you're building here?" he said, voice low but not unfriendly. Daria looked up. "Space," she said. Dana added, "For people like us, and not just us." Ramirez nodded slowly. "You know, this school, it's had problems for a long time, but folks don't usually take it into their own hands." "We're not causing trouble," Dana said. "I didn't say you were." He scratched his chin, thinking, just wondering how long before someone else says it. He paused, then pulled something from his back pocket, a laminated pass. "You ever need this space when I'm not around, use this." Daria took it carefully, eyes meeting his. It wasn't permission, it was solidarity. The next day, other teachers started poking their heads into the gym. Not all stayed, but they noticed, and that mattered. During staff lunch, someone brought it up. "They're running a martial arts club now." "No," Mr. Harper said quietly. "They're building community." Across the table, a teacher shifted uncomfortably. "Still, you have to wonder where this leads." "Hopefully," Harper replied, without looking up from his sandwich, "to something better than where we've been." In the gym, another student bowed, and outside the window, snow began to fall again. But inside, the room was warmer than ever. Lauren stood outside the gym, arms crossed, the door half open in front of her. Inside, the voices of students echoed soft laughter, instructions, feet sliding on mats. The sound annoyed her more than she expected. Not because it was loud, but it wasn't about her. She hadn't meant for things to go this far. It had started with a comment, then a smirk, then a dare from one of her friends. It was never supposed to be real. But now, Dana and Daria weren't just the new girls. They were something else. Something people watched. And Lauren didn't like feeling invisible. She stepped inside. The gym quieted just slightly, the way a room shifts when it senses weather coming. Daria saw her first. Said nothing. Dana didn't flinch. "You lost?" she asked. Lauren gave a tight smile. "No, just watching." "You've had a lot to say behind closed doors," Daria said evenly. "Here's open space. Say it." A few students looked at each other. Aiden lowered his camera. Kay shifted closer to the mat's edge, arms folded. Lauren hesitated. Her confidence wavered, just enough for the room to notice. "I didn't come to start anything," she said. "Good," Dana replied. "Because we're done fighting shadows." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was firm. Final. Lauren left without another word. Outside the gym, she leaned against the wall and exhaled hard. For the first time, she wasn't sure where she fit. Back inside, the twins returned to the group without missing a beat. Dana clapped once, back to it. The rhythm picked up again, feet, breath, trust. Later that night, Lauren sat alone at her kitchen table. She opened her phone, searched the group's name, The Stand. She didn't click follow, not yet, but she didn't close the tab either. Change rarely starts with an apology. Sometimes it starts with silence and what you do next. Mrs. Halpin stared at the security footage Aiden had left on her desk. No note. Just a USB drive in a blank envelope. She'd debated opening it. She'd discussed turning it in. But curiosity or maybe guilt won. The video was silent and grainy, but clear enough. Lauren is pushing Dana. Graffiti scrawled across a locker door. Daria was standing between her sister and 3 other students, her shoulders squared up, as if she were holding up a wall. Mrs. Halpern leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled beneath her chin. Her office was quiet, save for the faint hum of the building's heating system. She'd seen bruises bloom quietly over the years at this school, the kind that didn't show on skin, the type that hid in hallways, glances, passed notes, and used seating charts. But this was the first time someone had handed her the mirror. She shut the laptop and stared out the window. Snow dusted the schoolyard as if silence had taken a physical form. Later that afternoon, she stopped Dana and Daria in the hallway. "I saw it," she said. Dana's jaw tensed, and Mrs. Halpern hesitated. "This complicates things." "No," Daria replied. "This clarifies them. You're asking me to pick sides." "No," Dana said. "We're asking you to stand where it's right." That evening, the school sent an email to all parents, inviting them to an open forum on student wellness and inclusion. Carefully worded, non-threatening, almost forgettable. But someone posted it in the school's parent Facebook group, and someone else added the footage. It spread, quietly, then louder. By morning, everyone had seen it. Teachers whispered in the staff lounge. Students showed it to each other during their breaks between classes, and for the first time, no one asked the twins if it was real, because it was undeniable. And when truth becomes that clear, neutrality begins to feel like betrayal. By lunchtime, the cafeteria had turned into a whisper chamber. Phones hovered just below the tabletops. Eyes flicked toward the twins, then back to trays of pizza and milk cartons. No one said it out loud, but everyone had seen it. The footage, the hallway, the shove, the slurs in marker ink. The silence had been pierced, and now it echoed. Dana and Daria sat at their usual spot near the back window. Kay beside them, Aiden a seat over, fiddling with a phone he wasn't even pretending to hide. 2 sixth graders they barely knew had quietly joined them that day, their trays clutched tight to their chests, seeking proximity to something that finally made sense. Lauren sat on the opposite side of the cafeteria. Her table felt smaller today. 2 of her usual friends had peeled away, sitting 1 row down, their laughter forced and too loud. Daria noticed but didn't smile. Dana ate slowly and methodically, as if refusing to let the noise dictate her rhythm. Miss Chavez, the PE teacher, made a deliberate loop around the tables. She stopped by the twins for just a second too long and placed a hand on Dana's shoulder. Not for correction, for confirmation. "You girls doing all right?" Dana nodded. "We're steady." Chavez gave the faintest smile. "Good. Let me know if that changes." And then it happened. A boy from Lauren's old circle, Jameson, walked across the cafeteria, paused, and placed a folded piece of paper on the twins' table. He didn't say anything, just nodded once and walked away. Daria opened it. Inside, written in block letters, "You shouldn't have had to prove it." There was no signature, just silence. But it was the kind of silence that felt different, like the first second after a storm, when something new tries to bloom. Dana looked around the room. Eyes still watched. But they are no longer accused, some asked, and some waited for permission to change. The school auditorium hadn't been this full in years. Folding chairs lined the aisles. A pot of coffee steamed unattended in the back corner, more out of habit than hospitality. The open forum on student wellness and inclusion was underway, although no one mentioned the word racism. Not yet. Parents sat shoulder to shoulder. Some held printouts of the email. A few had watched the footage again that morning, fingers tightening around coffee mugs. Teachers lined the back wall, lips pressed thin. Principal Halpern stood at the podium, hands clasped too tightly, voice trying to strike a balance between calm and control. "We're here tonight," she began, "to listen, to reflect, to move forward as a community." A woman in the 3rd row raised her hand, white, middle-aged, PTA regular. "How did this happen under your watch?" she asked, voice clipped. Another man chimed in, tall, quiet, black. "The real question is, how long has it been happening?" A low murmur followed. Questions spilled forward now. Why weren't the girls protected sooner? Why weren't the bullies named? Why hadn't the school acted until it went public? Mr. Hopper stood. These kids, Dana and Daria, weren't looking for a stage. They were looking for safety. And when they didn't get it, they built it themselves. A slow clap came from the back. Miss Chavez, not dramatic, just honest. Dana and Daria sat beside their parents near the front, stone still. Their mother's jaw was set. Their father leaned forward, hands clasped. They weren't here to be pitied. They were here to be heard. A board member cleared his throat. We're reviewing the footage. We're committed to accountability. Someone scoffed. We've heard that before. Daria stood. Her voice didn't tremble. We didn't come here to make trouble. We came here because this is our school too. Silence. Then, a woman in the back, an elderly substitute teacher, nodded slowly. You're right, she said. And I'm sorry we made you prove it. The next morning, the hallways felt different. Not louder, not exactly warmer, just less brittle. Students moved past Dana and Daria without the usual double takes. Eyes still glanced, but they didn't linger with accusation. There were nods now, awkward, half-grown things, but real. Recognition. Perhaps people were starting to see the twins as more than just headlines, more than just disruption. Maybe even as part of something shared. At her locker, Dana found a sticky note folded in half. Simple. Thank you for not backing down. No name, no flair, just ink and honesty. In the cafeteria, Kay had already claimed their table. A quiet fortress in a storm, now beginning to calm. She lifted her coffee and offered a toast without speaking. Daria smirked. Dana mirrored it. Hayden slid in late, his hoodie damp from the drizzle outside. He gave them a quiet thumbs up, then reached into his bag and handed Dana a flash drive. It's all here, he whispered. Everything they'll need if this goes legal. Dana looked at it, didn't take it. Keep it safe for now, she said. We're not done yet. Later in gym class, Miss Chavez split the group into pairs. Dana was paired with Jameson, the same boy who'd dropped the note earlier. He didn't avoid her gaze, didn't shrink. As they moved through sparring drills, he whispered, I'm sorry for what I didn't do. Dana didn't respond right away. She countered his move, held his wrist gently but firmly, and said, next time, do something. He nodded, and meant it. That afternoon, a 7th grade girl asked if she could join the self-defense group, then another. Word was spreading not through flyers, but through stories. Small ones, powerful ones. By the time the final bell rang, Dana and Daria walked out the front doors with their shoulders relaxed, not because the world had changed, but because they had. And that was enough for now. That evening, the twins sat in their room, back to back on the floor, surrounded by the quiet hum of a city winding down. Outside, sirens threaded through the air like the Bronx's own lullaby. Inside, the walls held the echo of something shifting, something almost too fragile to name. Daria was sketching lines fluid, loose, charcoal smudging the paper in waves of motion. Two figures standing back to back, their shadows taller than they were. Dana journaled quietly beside her, her pen gliding without pause. I think it's working, Daria said, still drawing. Not all at once, but something's changing. Dana didn't look up. It's not just us anymore. No, it's not. A soft knock interrupted them. Their mother peeked in, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea, steam curling like breath in winter. She didn't say much, just set the cups down and sat on the bed, watching her daughters with a mix of worry and pride only mothers carry. You did something brave, she said. We did what we had to, Dana replied. Their mother nodded slowly. Most people never even try. Silence settled again. Not heavy, just full. Across the room, Daria turned her sketchpad around. Dana stared at the image. The 2 figures weren't just them. They were everyone they'd stood up for. Kay, Hayden, the 7th graders, even Jameson. She took the drawing and pinned it above their desk. Tomorrow, there'd be more whispers. There'd be resistance. Nothing would be easy. But the twins had learned something powerful in the past few weeks. When truth is held long enough, it starts to hold others too. Before turning out the light, Dana added one last line to her journal. We didn't ask to lead, but maybe we were meant to. Outside, a bus rumbled past. A dog barked in the alley. Life moved on, and so would they. Not quietly, not invisibly, but fully, unapologetically present. The Monday after the school board meeting began like any other, but it didn't feel the same. Faculty members moved differently, more deliberately, more watchfully. Teachers who once kept their heads down now exchanged loaded glances in the break room. Students noticed too. The air had the tautness of a drawn string, ready to snap or sing. In the first period of English, Mr. Harper deviated from the planned lesson. He closed the literature textbook, rested both hands on the desk, and said quietly, "We spend a lot of time talking about heroes. Usually, they're in books, but sometimes they're sitting among us." The room went still. Dana and Daria didn't look up. They didn't need to. They knew. He continued, "You all saw what happened. You've heard what was said. This classroom is no longer neutral ground. Neutrality protects no one. So today, we're writing but not fiction. We're writing truths." He passed out blank paper. No prompt. Just silence. Pens scratched the surface like soft footsteps in snow. Some kids stared, stuck between fear and thought. Others bent forward with an urgency, as if their stories had been waiting for permission to be told. Across the room, a boy named Marcus, usually invisible, quiet, the kind who never raised his hand, began to write furiously. A girl beside him wiped her eyes and kept going. Dana filled her page with steady, clean lines. Daria sketched first, then translated her images into words that landed like quiet thunder. When the bell rang, no one moved. Not right away. Mr. Harper stood. "If you want to share, stay after. If not, that's fine too. But remember, silence may protect you, but it never changes anything." Half the class stayed, and as the door clicked shut behind the others, the remaining students looked at one another not as classmates, but as witnesses to a shared experience. They weren't just writing stories. They were reclaiming space, one truth at a time. The twins had gotten used to walking through the halls like shadows, noticed but not engaged, felt but not embraced. But something had shifted. It was in the way people paused when they entered a room now, in the way conversations hesitated, then restarted in a lower register. Daria noticed it first in the library. They passed a table of juniors boys who had once snickered when she corrected a teacher's history error. This time, the boys went silent. One of them even nodded. She didn't return it, but she remembered. Dana saw it in the gym. A girl from Lauren's old circle tied her shoelaces beside her and said nothing cruel, just tied her shoes, eyes down. It was not an apology, but it was not a threat either. These shifts weren't peace offering. They were acknowledgments, quiet ones. But in a school that had long treated silence like a weapon, this absence of cruelty felt almost revolutionary. One afternoon, while organizing mats for the next self-defense class, Daria looked up to find Miss Chavez, the PE teacher and former Army vet, watching them from the doorframe. "You girls started a fire," she said, voice low, even. Daria blinked. "A fire? Not the burning kind, the illuminating kind." Dana smiled, slowly and knowingly. "We're just making room." Chavez stepped into the gym. "Then let me help you clear it." From that day on, Miss Chavez became more than a passive ally. She stayed after hours, corrected form, and taught breathing. She didn't say much about what the school was or wasn't doing, but her presence was an answer. Word spread that the after-school group now had faculty support. More students joined. Some came curiously, some came bruised, some came just to be somewhere they weren't afraid. The whispers hadn't stopped, but the quiet that used to follow the twins like a shadow, it was gone. In its place stood presence, and presence once claimed is hard to unsee. On a Thursday afternoon, the twins stayed late to help clean the gym. The final echoes of sneakers had faded, the air smelled of sweat and worn leather, and the metal bleachers stood folded like secrets kept too long. Miss Chavez lingered, clipboard in hand, pretending to double-check attendance, but she wasn't watching names, she was watching the two girls move. "You know," she said finally, "when I was stationed in Fallujah, we used to say the real battle didn't happen in the streets. It happened in the silence after." Dana paused mid-fold with a mat. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Chavez said, stepping forward, "what do you do when no one's watching?" That's who you are. That's the battle you have to win first. Daria sat down on the bleachers, arms crossed loosely. Feels like we're still fighting, just differently now. You are. Chavez nodded. But now others are watching. And when people are watching, you're teaching, even if you don't mean to. There was a beat of silence. Outside, a janitor's cart squeaked past the hallway. Then Dana whispered, "We never wanted to be teachers. We just wanted to stop hiding." Chavez smiled, not unkindly. Every movement starts like that. Someone just wants to breathe. The moment lingered. 3 women. 3 generations. Bound not by blood, but by understanding. When they walked out into the twilight, the building seemed quieter, but not in the lonely way. More like a breath held in collective anticipation. Down the hall, a custodian had tacked a new flyer beside the trophy case. In bolder ink now, it read, "The Stand. Self-defense, self-respect, solidarity." Underneath, someone had scribbled in small cursive, "Because silence was never golden for all of us." Dana didn't touch it. Daria didn't smile. But both stood still for a moment longer than necessary. Sometimes, the most radical thing a person can do is stay visible. The last bell had rung nearly an hour ago, but the gym still hummed with quiet movement. Mats stretched across the floor like open invitations, and a handful of students lingered, stretching, practicing, whispering between reps. What had started as self-defense had begun to evolve into something more, a shared space where silence wasn't necessary and dignity was automatic. Dana adjusted the shoulders of a younger boy named Caleb, who had joined 2 weeks ago after being shoved into a locker. He was wiry, anxious, and quick to apologize, but now, for the first time, he met her eyes with steady breath and a stance that held. Across the gym, Daria guided a new student through a basic block. The girl's name was Sophia. She wore long sleeves in the heat and never spoke above a whisper, but tonight she laughed. Just once. It echoed more than any punch. Coach Chavez sat on the bleachers with Miss Halpern, who had finally accepted an invitation to observe the game. The principal said little, but her folded hands rested easier than usual. "I didn't think they could hold something like this together," Halpern admitted. Chavez replied, "That's because you thought it was just about fighting. It never was." At the far end of the room, Kay stitched patches into the inside of students' jackets, small symbols that weren't for display, but for remembrance. Not everyone could afford uniforms, but everyone deserved an identity. Hayden tapped at his laptop, tweaking a private online forum called The Stand. It wasn't public yet, but it would be, soon. As the sun dipped low outside, amber light spilled across the hardwood floor. Dana looked around, not at who they were protecting, but at who was stepping into their power. "This," she whispered to Daria, "isn't just defense anymore. It's a beginning." Daria nodded. "Then let's make sure it doesn't end." It started with a note taped to the gym door. Not flashy, not bold. Just a plain white sheet with 4 words typed in black ink. "Thank you for seeing me." There was no signature, no explanation. Just those words and the unmistakable feeling they were meant for Dana and Daria. The twins found it after practice, just as the building emptied into dusk. Dana stared at it in silence. Daria read it twice. "Someone's been changed," Dana murmured. "Or finally felt real," Daria replied. By the following Monday, the ripples had spread beyond the mats. At lunch, 2 girls from the yearbook club approached Dana with an idea, a photo essay on unseen strength. "Not just athletes," one said, "but the quiet ones, the fighters no one notices until they stand." In English, Miss Henry asked Daria to share one of her poems aloud. It wasn't just encouragement, it was a moment of being valued for something more profound than resistance. Even the janitor, Mr. Ruiz, who rarely spoke, left a sticky note on Aiden's laptop. "You're doing something good. Don't stop." The stand wasn't a secret anymore, but it still wasn't a revolution. Not yet. That came when Sophia, the quiet girl with long sleeves and hidden scars, stood up in history class. The discussion was about peaceful resistance. Someone scoffed. "Peace doesn't work. Violence is all they understand." Sophia's voice didn't tremble. "Violence isn't power. Healing Island. Silence fell. Not just because she'd spoken, but because what she said held. Dana and Daria weren't even in the room. And yet, they were everywhere. Ripples, the kind that starts in silence and end by moving mountains. Tuesday morning brought rain. Not the loud kind, but a steady whisper against the windows like the city itself was trying to wash something away. In the cafeteria, the twins sat at their usual table, now surrounded by students who hadn't dared come close just a month before: Sophia, Kay, Aiden, and two boys from the wrestling team. The circle had widened, but the storm outside wasn't the only one brewing. A teacher had reported that the stand might be becoming too influential. That word influential was used like a warning. Coach Chavez called Dana aside. "I heard the school board is meeting next week. Some parents are concerned." Dana frowned. Concerned about what? Kids not being afraid anymore? Chavez smiled without amusement. They don't say it out loud. They never do. Meanwhile, Lauren's group had grown quieter, but not kinder. Their cruelty had gone underground digital. Now rumors on Snapchat, half-truths twisted into threats. Daria found a meme of their self-defense class, mocking Aiden's stutter. It had already been shared 30 times. "We're not just fighting fists anymore," Daria muttered, phone trembling in her hand. "Now we're fighting shadows." That night, Dana couldn't sleep. She paced the living room, listening to the rain tick against the glass. Papa Joe's old words came back to her. Every movement meets resistance. That's how you know it's moving. She finally sat, pulled out her journal, and wrote, "They want us to be polite, not powerful. They want quiet fists, not steady hands. But storms also start in silence, so let it rain." The next morning, the stand met as usual. No words, just breathe, stance, focus. Each movement spoke of something ancient resilience carved into bone. They didn't need to talk to be heard. They were already making noise beneath the surface. The library smelled like old paper and new tension. Folding chairs had been arranged in neat rows. At the front, a podium stood beneath the school crest, the motto carved into the wood: excellence through unity. Tonight, it felt more like irony than inspiration. The school board had called a special community meeting, open forum, they called it, but everyone knew it was about the stand. The flyer had read, "Concerns over student-led physical training programs and safety protocols." Dana sat near the back next to Daria and Kay. Aiden had come too, fidgeting with a stress ball in his hoodie pocket. Parents filed in, some curious, others tight-lipped. Lauren's mother arrived in a beige coat and stiletto heels that clicked like punctuation. She didn't look at the twins. She didn't have to. Her presence screamed enough. Miss Halpin opened the meeting with her usual practiced smile. "We're here to discuss a growing initiative that's raised both praise and concern." A man stood first, balding, red-faced, voice sharp. "I don't send my child to school to learn combat." "What kind of message are we sending?" Another woman rose, her voice calmer but firm. "My daughter hasn't had a panic attack since joining the stand. She walks taller. That matters." Murmurs. Applause. Then silence. Lauren's mom stood. No one's questioning the intention, but perception matters. A group of students training to fight, that's intimidating, especially when other students feel targeted. Dana's hand clenched. Daria placed a hand over it, steadying. Then, to everyone's surprise, Mr. Ruiz, the janitor, stood. "You all talk about what's scary. I cleaned the lockers that they used to get shoved into. You want to talk about fear? Try silence." It wasn't loud, but it landed. The board promised a continued review. The meeting adjourned without any decisions being made. But outside, under the flickering street lamp, Dana looked around at the others. "We're not done," she said. "No," Daria echoed. "We're just getting louder." The next morning, the school halls were quieter than usual, not in volume, but in intention. Every glance, every shuffled footstep carried something unspoken. The meeting had stirred more than conversation. It had unearthed lines that people didn't know they'd drawn until they saw who was standing on either side. Dana and Daria walked into school as they always did together. back straight, eyes ahead. But something had changed. A girl in band class nodded at them. One of the lunch monitors offered a silent thumbs up. Even Miss Halpern, who rarely broke from administrative detachment, greeted them with a softer tone. But not everyone was moved. That afternoon, word spread fast. The school board had sent out a confidential staff poll. No votes from parents, no student input. Just one question. Should extracurricular programs involving physical contact require formal oversight and approval from the district? A yes would mean shutting the stand down until further notice. By the fifth period, tension had built like thunder behind the clouds. Daria overheard two teachers whispering in the break room. "It's not the program, it's the precedent," one said. "If we let students organize like this, what's next?" "They're organizing because no one else did," the other replied. The twins found out about the vote from Mr. Harper, their social studies teacher. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't need to. "Power doesn't disappear," he said, sliding them a folded note. "It just finds a quieter room." Dana opened the paper. It was the whole poll question, typed neatly. Beneath it, in his handwriting, "If they silence movement, will they silence meaning too?" That night, the stand trained in silence. No music, no instruction, just breathe and pursue. The room vibrated with quiet defiance. They didn't know how the vote would go, but they knew this. No matter what the adults decided, something had already shifted, and no one, not even a board with ballots, could unshift it back. The results of the vote came on a Friday morning. A chilly wind swept through the school courtyard, lifting the last yellow leaves like fragile warnings. The email was blunt and clinical, devoid of humanity. Effective immediately, all unsanctioned physical programs are to be suspended pending district review. No one said the stand by name. They didn't have to. In homeroom, Kay slid her phone across the desk to Daria. "They shut it down," she whispered, like saying it too loud might make it more real. Dana didn't flinch. She closed her notebook slowly and looked at her sister, their shared silence stronger than panic. "Let's go tell them," she said. Her voice was calm, determined. After school, the gym doors were locked. A printed sign flapped slightly in the cold wind. Access restricted until further notice. The official stamp at the bottom looked like a bruise. Students gathered around, some from the group, others just curious. A boy from the theater asked, "So, is that it?" Dana stepped forward. "You don't need maths to know how to stand tall." Daria added, "We didn't build this because we needed a room. We built it because we needed each other." For a moment, no one moved. The silence wasn't fear this time. It was waiting for someone to lead. Then Kay unzipped her hoodie. Beneath it, the patch. Black and gold fists stitched over her chest like armor. "So we meet outside," she said. Hayden held up his phone. "We stream it. Private server. Password protected." A girl from the soccer team nodded. "We've got cones and gear. We can train in the park." Someone else said, "My uncle owns a tire shop. Big backlot, empty after 6. Ideas flowed like water breaking through a dam. They didn't just want a class. They wanted a class. They wanted to belong. And now, no vote could contain that. The stand hadn't ended. It had evolved. From a gym to a movement. From whispers to war drums. From isolation to ignition. They lost a room, but gained a reason. And now, they marched fists ready, eyes clear, purpose louder than permission. The folding chairs in the school auditorium were too close together, their metal legs clinking with every slight adjustment. The air buzzed with polite tension, the kind that came with potluck casseroles and forced smiles. Parents filed in, some still in scrubs, some in suits, others in hoodies zipped up against the cold. The scent of cafeteria coffee drifted beneath the bright overhead lights. Everything looked harmless, ordinary. That was the most dangerous part. Dana and Daria's mother sat near the middle, her posture perfect, her face unreadable. Their father stood against the wall, arms crossed, scanning the room like a soldier off duty but not off guard. A few parents glanced at them, then quickly looked away. Mrs. Halpern took the mic with her usual practiced warmth. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives to be here. Tonight, we'll discuss progress, safety, and how we can all support our students. Dana noticed Lauren's mom arrive late. Blonde bob, expensive purse, sunglasses still on indoors. She whispered something to a staff member and sat in the front row, her expression visibly irritated. 2 rows behind her, Aiden's parents had already pulled out a notepad. Kay's guardian, a tired-looking aunt in paint-stained jeans, sat quietly in the back. Then it began. Lauren's mother raised her hand before the principal had finished her second sentence. Yes, hi. I'd like to address an ongoing concern. My daughter has been physically intimidated, even assaulted, by 2 students who seem to think school is their dojo. One of them then. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Daria's father straightened. Dana's jaw set. Mrs. Halpin cleared her throat. Mrs. Whitaker, we've spoken. No. Lauren's mom interrupted. We've danced around it. It's time someone said it plainly. These girls are a threat. Silence swallowed the room whole, until someone stood up. It was Aiden. He held up a USB drive. Actually, he said, voice steady despite the tremble in his hand, I think we should all see what happened. Aiden's voice, soft but resolute, hung in the auditorium like the first crack of thunder before a summer storm. He walked down the aisle, USB still raised, and handed it to Mr. Harper, one of the few teachers who had stayed late for the meeting. The social studies teacher hesitated, then plugged it into the laptop connected to the projector without asking for anyone's permission. The screen flickered to life. First clip. A grainy security feed near the locker room. No audio, just motion. Lauren walked past Dana, then suddenly spun around and pushed her hard against the lockers. Dana didn't retaliate. She stood, collected her books, and walked away. Second clip. The cafeteria. Lauren bumped into Daria, knocking her tray, then laughing with her group as milk splashed across the floor. Again, no reaction, just restraint. Third clip. The hallway. Someone unmistakably Lauren spray painting Know Your Place in thick black letters across a locker door. The timestamp showed it was hours before school opened. She wasn't even supposed to be there. A hush fell over the crowd. Lauren's mother looked as if her chair had turned to ice beneath her. She stammered, that can't be the whole story. You don't know what it's like for Lauren. Aiden spoke again. I do know. Because she came for me too. She said people like me shouldn't even speak. Kay stood up next. She told me I dressed like a freak, that my family didn't count. I have the messages, still saved. One by one, students rose, some trembling, others defiant, each a slight tremor building into a quake. Daria leaned over to Dana. We were never alone, she whispered. From the back, Papa Joe's deep voice cut through the emotion. Truth always sounds loud when it's been buried too long. Mrs. Halpern didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. The room had turned, not in anger, but in revelation. The projector blinked off, and nothing in that school would ever look the same again. The silence after the projector shut off wasn't hollow, it was dense. Thick with swallowed pride, unspoken apologies, and decades of learned avoidance. Parents stared forward, some blinking rapidly, others unable to meet anyone's eyes. For a moment, it was as if no one knew how to breathe in a room now lit with truth. Mrs. Whitaker shifted in her seat. Her lipstick no longer looked composed. It cracked at the corners as she opened her mouth, then closed it again. Dana watched her without judgment, but without mercy either. The facts had spoken. Words were no longer necessary. From the side of the auditorium, Miss Chavez, the PE teacher, stood. Her voice was gravelly but clear. I've taught at this school for 18 years, and I've seen too many things go unnamed. But tonight, our students named them for us. And maybe it's time we listen. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few parents nodded. One clapped quietly, then another. It wasn't applause. It was an agreement, recognition. Daria's father uncrossed his arms and stepped forward. We didn't raise our girls to fight. We raised them to protect, to stand for those who haven't yet found their voice. And they're not alone. You've all seen it now. You can't pretend you didn't. The school counselor, Mrs. Bergman, cleared her throat. I think it's time we revisit our anti-bullying protocols. Not just the rules, but the culture. Maybe the kids are ahead of us in that. Lauren slumped in her seat. Her mother didn't reach for her. In the back row, Aiden's mom wiped her eyes. I didn't know my son had been so brave, she whispered. Dana looked over at her sister. This was never about revenge, she said. No, Daria answered. It's about return, of dignity, of truth. And in that moment, under fluorescent lights and awkward folding chairs, something shifted not just in the school, but in the adults meant to protect it. The girls didn't need to say another word. They had already won something more profound than an argument. They'd won acknowledgement. The Monday after the meeting, the school felt different. Not loud, not proud, just softer, like snow had fallen overnight and blanketed something jagged. For the first time since Dana and Daria arrived, the hallway didn't buzz with whispers. It exhaled. Posters that once advertised bake sales now carried messages handwritten in marker. We stand together. Silence is complicity. Someone had even taped Kay's fist sketch to the trophy case outside the gym. Gold marker traced bold outlines. No one took it down. In homeroom, Mr. Harper stood a little straighter. Today, he said, we're not just studying history. We're part of it. His lesson on civil disobedience felt less like theory and more like a torch passing. Daria looked over at Kay, who wore her patched hoodie like armor. Kay gave a slight nod, a language all their own. Even in the lunchroom, change hummed beneath the trays and chatter. A boy who'd once laughed too loudly at a slur now nodded awkwardly as he passed their table. Dana didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Bridges didn't need banners, just bricks. After school, the self-defense room filled again. Not with tension, but with rhythm. The twins led drills with quiet confidence. Aiden adjusted the lights he'd rewired over the weekend. Kay placed a jar labeled First Fund on the windowsill. Coins clinked inside. Someone had started something. Then came the unexpected. Mrs. Halpin stepped into the room. No clipboard, no polite smile, just presence. I'm not here to supervise, she said softly. I'm here to learn. Dana and Daria exchanged a look, not surprised, just ready. Because sometimes authentic leadership isn't in command, it's in humility. And that afternoon, as mats shuffled and bodies moved in synchronicity, the ripple became a tide. That night, the school didn't close in its usual hush. The janitor, Mr. Alvarez, noticed it first. The side gym door left open just a crack, enough for the cool Bronx air to creep through. He was about to shut it when he heard the faint thump of movement inside. Rhythmic, controlled, alive. Inside, the mats hadn't been rolled up yet. Dana and Daria stood at the center, barefoot, breath steaming in the cold. They weren't training, not exactly. They moved through kata like memory, like ritual. This wasn't defense. It was prayer, a physical claiming of space. The sound of their breath, the softness of their stances, these were not acts of violence, but acts of remembering. Mr. Alvarez didn't interrupt. He watched quietly, hands in his pockets. He'd cleaned that gym for 22 years and had never seen it remain so still, this sacred. His daughter had once been bullied in this very school, years ago. He never forgot how alone she looked when she walked through those halls. Tonight, something was different. These girls weren't alone. They were becoming a reason for others not to feel alone as well. When the girls finally stopped, they didn't speak. Dana knelt to tie her shoelace. Daria adjusted a loose corner of the mat. Movements are simple, ordinary, but something about them had shifted. They no longer moved like visitors in someone else's house. They moved like architects in their own right. Back at home, their mother was waiting for them. The kitchen smelled of thyme and garlic, and the radio played low jazz. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She looked at their faces, tired, bright, steady, and nodded. Keep going. She said just that. Later in bed, Daria whispered, Do you think they'll forget? Dana turned to the ceiling. Maybe. But forgetting doesn't mean it didn't happen. We made the echo. It's out there now. And outside the school, The door remained cracked open, not from carelessness, but from choice. A sign, maybe, that not all things need to be locked up to be safe. The morning after the parent meeting, the hallways felt unfamiliar. Not because anything had changed outwardly. Lockers still clanged, sneakers still squeaked, the intercom still buzzed with its usual static. But something underneath had shifted, like a tide just beneath the surface, tugging gently but relentlessly. Dana noticed it first. A boy from her math class, white baseball jacket, always traveled in packs, held the door open for her. He didn't say anything, didn't make eye contact, just had it, then walked away. It wasn't an apology, but it was nothing. Daria passed a group of girls near the water fountain. They usually looked through her like she wasn't there. Today, one of them nodded. A single, hesitant acknowledgement. Maybe it meant, I saw. Maybe it meant, I'm sorry. Or perhaps just, I'm learning. In English class, Miss Chavez read a quote from Toni Morrison aloud. Definitions belong to the definers, not the defined. Then she looked directly at Dana and Daria, not performatively, just enough to let them know she understood, or was trying to. Kay sat beside them at lunch, as she had for weeks, but this time her tray held an extra cookie. For you, she said to Daria, then shrugged. They ran out of chocolate chips, a small gesture, a soft kind of solidarity. In the afternoon, Principal Halpern announced the public address system. The school recognizes the need for a more inclusive culture. We will be hosting listening circles next week, open to all students. We hear you, and we want to do better. By this, where some scoffed, others looked surprised. But Dana and Daria didn't react. Their posture remained the same, calm, measured, rooted. That night, Dana wrote in her journal, "Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks beside you in silence. And that's when you know it's starting to last." By the end of the week, the listening circle wasn't just an idea, it was a room. The library had never felt so full, not with books, but with bodies. Students sat in folding chairs pulled from classrooms, backs hunched with uncertainty. Teachers lined the walls, their expressions a mix of curiosity and quiet defense. Principal Halpern stood by the windows, arms folded tightly as though bracing for something larger than she'd prepared for. Dana and Daria sat together but didn't speak first. They watched, observed, listened as a freshman girl described how she stopped wearing her hijab after being mocked in gym. A senior boy, tall and soft-spoken, shared how no one believed white parents adopted him. Aiden read aloud a short statement he'd written, "Discomfort is not danger. Silence Island." Then the room fell quiet. A guidance counselor gestured gently toward the twins. "Would you like to share anything?" Dana looked at Daria. Her sister's expression was unreadable, but her nod was slow and deliberate. Dana stood, not rushed, not defensive. She didn't need to win the room, just name the truth inside it. "We didn't come here to change people's minds," she began. "We came here to exist, and we were met with fear." She let that sit. No theatrics, just wait. Self-defense wasn't just about fists, Daria added. It was about claiming space, about not folding in on ourselves to make others comfortable. A teacher near the back cleared her throat. "But don't you think," she began, before stopping herself. The moment was heavy with the realization that perhaps for once, the best thing to do was not to defend, but to receive. Afterward, a boy named Marcus approached them. He was in their chemistry class, but he had never spoken to them before. "I didn't know how to help," he said, voice low. "But now I think I want to." Daria offered a tired, grateful smile. "Then start by staying." Outside, the sky was beginning to pinken. It wasn't warm yet, but it was softer, like the air had stopped bracing against them. Monday brought a different kind of tension. Not sharp, not hostile, more like a held breath. Teachers greeted students with less performative cheer and more cautious sincerity. Hall monitors nodded at Dana and Daria, as if they had always meant to, but never quite had the courage before. In the cafeteria, the usual hierarchy felt loosened. Lauren and her clique still sat at their corner table, but their laughter was quieter, less frequent. Something about the air made sarcasm feel heavier now, less clever, more revealing. As if their cruelty had aged overnight and no longer wore its mask well. Dana noticed a new pattern. When she passed by, students no longer just looked away. Some met her eyes, and a few even nodded. A boy she didn't know, maybe in ninth grade, slipped her a folded note as he walked past. It said, "Thanks for showing us how to stay standing." At practice that afternoon, the gym felt full even before the mats were rolled out. Kay had brought a speaker and played old soul tracks as they stretched Aretha, Sam Cooke, Nina Simone. It gave the room a pulse. "New kids today," Aiden announced, pointing to two students hovering near the doorway, a boy with Down syndrome and a tall girl with scars up her arms and eyes like winter glass. Dana didn't wave them in. She just nodded, gave space, and waited. By the end of the warm-up, they were on the mat. "Why are you doing this?" one of the new kids asked softly during a water break. Daria paused, then replied, "Because if no one teaches you to hold your ground, the world will teach you to disappear." That night, Miss Chavez emailed them an article titled, "Youth Movements as Modern Legacy." No subject line, just the words, "You're part of something bigger." Dana printed it out and folded it into her journal. Not all revolutions are loud. Some begin in rooms without applause, and still they rise. By Wednesday, Miss Chavez brought in folding chairs from the band room. "You're building a program," she said, half teasing, half in awe. "Not just a club." The mats were full, old students paired with new ones. There was less talking now, but more listening, more watching. Movements were learned not by command, but by trust. Daria corrected a younger boy's stance without saying a word. He nodded, adjusted, and tried again. That afternoon, the gym door opened slowly. In walked Mrs. Halpin. She didn't say anything, just watched from the back, arms crossed, lips pursed, not in disapproval, but in uncertainty, as if she were measuring something she couldn't quite name. Dana didn't look her way. Not to be dismissive, but to stay rooted in what mattered. The kids on the mat. After 20 minutes, Mrs. Halpin approached Kay, who was organizing gear near the bleachers. "This has no official advisor," she said quietly. Kay shrugged. "It has purpose." The principal hesitated. "Purpose is good, but policy..." Kay tilted her head. "Sometimes policy catches up to purpose, if you let it." There was no argument, just silence. But it now held a different weight. Later that evening, a photo appeared on the school's website. A grainy shot of the gym from above, students mid-motion. Daria balancing a younger girl through a stance. The caption was simple. "Student-led movement builds strength and trust." It wasn't much, but it was the first time the school had acknowledged the group, publicly. When the twins saw it, they didn't cheer. Dana just exhaled, slow and full. Daria closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them wider than before. "Small crack," Donna murmured. "Let's make it wider," Daria replied. The hallways didn't echo the same way the next morning, not because the walls had changed, but because the students walking through them no longer moved in the same way. Some carried a note tucked in their sleeve. Some walked with looser shoulders. Some, for the first time in a long time, walked like they belonged. Friday brought no trumpets, no sudden thunderclap, just a stillness in the air like a page mid-turn. The school felt unchanged on the surface, scuffed lockers, cheap tile floors, bulletin boards with curling edges. But beneath that routine hum was a thrum of something different. Not tension, not relief. It was recognition. Dana found the note first, taped quietly inside her locker. No name, no threats. Just 5 words written in clean, rounded print. "You didn't bow. Thank you." She stared at it for a long moment before folding it into her journal. Not a keepsake, an anchor. In the hall, students didn't scatter like they used to. They hovered, observed, and nodded small acknowledgments. It was subtle, a tilt of a head, a softer voice, space made without fear. Even Lauren, sharp-tongued and watchful, didn't meet their eyes. Her power had become a memory. Near the gym, Miss Chavez flagged them down. "They want to talk to you, too. The district. There's a word you might be asked to lead a peer council on equity." Daria crossed her arms. "What? Now they care." Chavez's smile was tired but honest. "No, but now they can't pretend not to. That night, the twins walked more slowly than usual. It was cold, but they didn't bundle tightly. Their coats hung open, posture unshrinking. The Bronx lights shimmered on wet sidewalks. Daria pointed to a crack running beneath their feet. Funny how things break just to make space. Dana nodded. Roots grow through concrete. They reached their building and stood at the door a while, listening to the quiet hum of the city. Something had shifted, not loudly, not permanently, but enough. The kind of shift that spread, slow and steady, like light creeping under a door. Inside the school, nothing had changed, but the way students carried themselves, how teachers hesitated before speaking, the silence that once muffled every cry for help that had changed. And that silence, it would never go unchecked again. The invitation came on school letterhead, folded crisply, sealed with a gold sticker that felt more like an apology than an honor. Dana read it twice, her hands still smelling faintly of disinfectant from cleaning the gym mats. Student Diversity Forum, peer panelists selected. Below that, the names, hers, Daria's, and Lauren's. They're putting us on a stage together, Daria asked, brow arched. Dana exhaled, slow and steady. They're trying to show they're balanced, as if racism were a scale, and pain on one side could be justified by performance on the other. The forum was scheduled for a Thursday evening in the auditorium. Rows of plastic chairs waited under two bright lights. A banner hung behind the podium, Voices of the Future. It felt like a joke no one had the nerve to laugh at. Parents filled the room. Teachers, board members, a few students. Mostly white faces with expressions that ranged from curiosity to cautious approval. Lauren spoke first. Her voice was smooth, practiced. She spoke about misunderstandings, about growth, about learning to accept differences. The applause was polite. Then it was Daria's turn. She stood slowly, her silence more powerful than Lauren's polished words. I don't need to be accepted, she said quietly. I need to be safe. You could hear the breath catch in the room. My sister and I, we walk into classrooms where we're expected to fail, into hallways where our skin speaks before we do. We've been told to be quiet, to be respectable, to make our pain palatable. But our silence doesn't make us safe. It just makes you comfortable. Dana joined her, placing a hand gently on her sister's shoulder. This isn't about forgiveness. It's about recognition, about reckoning and rebuilding. There was no applause this time, just stillness, the kind that settles in a room when truth is finally spoken aloud. And in that moment, they weren't just students. They were mirrors, and no one could look away. After the forum, the school didn't erupt in applause or backlash. It did something far stranger. It went quiet. Dana and Daria walked the halls like usual, backs straight, eyes forward, but this time, footsteps behind them slowed, whispers softened, and doors that once closed in their faces now stayed cracked open. The silence wasn't peace. It was tension coiled in the ceiling tiles, waiting for someone to speak too loudly, to move too freely. In homeroom, Lauren stared ahead without a word. Her friends no longer giggled when the twins passed by. Something in her posture had changed, not guilt, not regret, but recognition. The kind that comes when a mirror finally reflects more than your shape. I don't trust it, Daria murmured, jotting something in the margins of her notebook. A sketch of fists, locked together like chain links. This silence feels like camouflage. Dana nodded. Like they're regrouping. The teacher called on Dana to read aloud from the day's literature assignment, Langston Hughes. She stood, voice steady. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. She didn't have to finish. The weight of the words filled the room like a rising tide. No one laughed. No one shifted. They simply listened. After class, a teacher approached them in the hallway, Mr. Rowan Science. He was always kind, always neutral. But now, he hesitated, his voice hushed. I didn't know, he said. I didn't see it. Dana looked him in the eye. You didn't have to see it. You just had to believe us when we said it hurt. He nodded, ashamed. The twins didn't gloat. They didn't need to. The power of truth wasn't in vengeance. It was in the shift. The shift of the eyes opening, of voices wavering, of hearts reconsidering. Because change doesn't always come with a shout. Sometimes it walks in quietly and demands to be heard anyway. That Sunday, the twins didn't sit in their usual pew. They stood outside Street Marks Baptist Church, beneath the weather-worn awning where Mama used to shake hands with the ushers. The sky was overcast, but the air carried the scent of pine and warm bread, a comforting and familiar aroma. Inside, the choir sang softly, their voices rising like incense. But Dana and Daria weren't ready to walk through those doors just yet. Pastor Whitmore found them out front, the Bible in one hand and sermon notes in the other. A kind man, gray creeping into his beard, but known for walking the fence too carefully when things got complicated. "You girls all right?" he asked, voice low. Daria looked at him squarely. "Are you?" That gave him pause. Dana stepped closer. "We noticed your silence. When the rumors spread, when the cameras caught things no one wanted to believe. You shook hands, smiled, but never asked." Pastor Whitmore looked down at his shoes. "Sometimes the pulpit isn't the place for conflict. Sometimes," Daria said, steady and calm, "silence is the conflict." The wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves. The choir inside shifted to an old spiritual, "I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around." Their grandmother used to hum it when cleaning the kitchen. "We needed our church," Dana said. "Not to fight for us, just to stand beside us, to say we mattered, even if it was messy." The pastor looked up. There was something heavier in his eyes than guilt, regret, maybe, or shame. "I heard your words at the school forum," he said slowly. "You shook more hearts than you know." Daria crossed her arms, not combative, just tired. "Good. Now shake some pulpits." There was no anger in her voice, just truth. As the doors opened and the congregation poured out, some paused when they saw the twins. But this time, a few didn't look away. One woman nodded. Another reached out and squeezed Dana's hand gently. No one said much. But some walls didn't need to fall with sound. They crumbled in silence and left space for something braver to rise. Monday morning didn't begin with morning announcements. It started with silence. Students filed into Ridgewood Middle as if they were walking into a courtroom. Whispers lingered, but even those felt thin and nervous. At 8:03 a.m., the intercom crackled. "Students, please report to the auditorium immediately." No one had time to ask why. They just moved. Inside, the stage was lit, but no one stood behind the podium. Instead, the projector screen descended slowly. Miss Halpern, the principal, sat off to the side, face drawn. A laptop glowed in front of her. She pressed a key, and the truth began to play. First, the locker footage, Lauren's hand dragging a marker across the metal, spelling out that slur. Then a hallway shot, Dana being shoved. Then the cafeteria, Daria pulling Dana back, holding her fists still. The faces were clear. The acts are undeniable. Gasps broke out like shattering glass. No voiceover, no edits, just raw, time-stamped truth. The final clip showed Lauren smirking, whispering behind Daria's back, followed by a slow zoom on Kay's quiet face as she watched, notebook in hand. That was the final frame. The lights came up, and nothing was the same. Some students cried. Some looked away. A few stood uncertain, ashamed, and clapped. One slow beat, then another. Not a performance ovation, a reckoning. Miss Halpern stood behind the podium, her voice low but even. "Too many of us knew. Too few of us acted. That ends today." She turned to the twins seated in the front row. "Dana, Daria, I can't undo silence, but I can listen now." Dana nodded. Daria didn't blink. As students spilled back into the hallway, a shift was palpable. Eyes met differently, voices softened, not erased but aware. A poster was taped outside the auditorium. "The truth is not violent. Denial Island." Hayden leaned against the wall near the exit. He didn't say much, just handed Dana a new USB drive. "Back up," he whispered, "for when they try to forget." Because they would try. But now, forgetting wouldn't be so easy. That evening, The Caldwell home was quieter than usual. Not the soft quiet of peace, but the aching silence of emotional weight. Their mother stirred a pot of collard greens with slow, meditative turns. Their father sipped tea but didn't drink it. Dana sat on the windowsill, legs tucked beneath her, watching dusk bleed into the Bronx skyline. Daria sat at the table, staring at nothing in particular. Finally, their father broke the stillness. You know, when I was your age, we didn't have video. We didn't have a backup, just our word. And sometimes, not even that was enough. Daria's voice was soft. Is it now? He looked at her. Sometimes it's not the proof that changes people. It's the discomfort, the mirror. Their mother wiped her hands on a dish towel and joined them. You girls made them look. That's more than most adults ever manage. But we didn't fix it, Dana whispered. We just exposed it. That's how fixing starts, her mother replied. By naming the wound. That night, Dana opened her journal. Her handwriting was slower, deliberate. They saw, they know. Now they have to choose. She paused before writing the following line. And so do we. The next morning at school, something unexpected happened. Miss Halpern asked them to meet her during first period. The twins braced themselves, expecting more apologies, more red tape. But when they arrived, Kay and Aiden were already there. Miss Halpern gestured toward a table of flyers and posters. At the top, bold letters read, Ridgewood Speaks, a student-led town hall on race, respect, and responsibility. She didn't speak for a moment, then said, We want you to lead it, not because we're shifting blame, but because we're following your lead. Dana looked at Daria. Daria nodded. Then we speak, Dana said, but not just for us, for everyone who's ever been silenced. The auditorium lights were dim, but the tension was blinding. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows, a modest podium at the front, and posters drawn by students flanking both sides. One read, Silence is a language too. Another, We are not asking to belong. We're reminding you we already do. Dana adjusted the mic. It wobbled slightly. She didn't. Daria stood beside her, calm as dusk before a summer storm. The room was packed with students, teachers, parents, and even a few local officials. But no one made a sound. Not yet. Dana leaned forward. My name is Dana Caldwell. This is my sister, Daria. We moved here a few months ago, thinking we'd just need to survive. But what we've learned is that surviving isn't enough. Daria picked up where Dana left off. We've learned that racism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, through narrowed eyes, through ignored complaints, through the silence of people who should have stood up. There were no interruptions. Not yet. They showed the footage, Lauren pushing Dana, the vandalized locker, and the smirks caught on the grainy hallway cameras. But it wasn't revenge. It was a reckoning. Dana continued, voice clear. This isn't just about two girls in a hallway. It's about the messages schools send unintentionally. It's about the weight some of us carry and the way others are never asked to. Kay stepped up next. She didn't speak right away. When she did, her voice trembled. I used to think if I dressed down enough, stayed small enough, they'd leave me alone. But silence doesn't keep you safe. It just keeps you unseen. The audience was quiet, but no longer cold. One by one, other students stood up. A Latino boy shared how his accent was mocked. A Muslim girl described hiding her prayers. Hayden talked about being the kid who stutters, and how being different meant being easy to erase. The room shifted. This wasn't a performance. It was a mirror, and Ridgewood, for the first time in a long time, was looking straight into it. The days following the assembly felt like walking through a city after rain. Things hadn't changed completely, but everything smelled different, fresher, awake. Hallways that once buzzed with low-grade hostility now held awkward silence, as if students were relearning how to look at one another. Some still looked away. Others met Dana and Daria's eyes with something new. Not pity, not fear, but something closer to respect. It wasn't just the kids who shifted. In the teacher's lounge, Miss Chavez, the PE teacher, placed a printout of the assembly transcript next to the coffee machine. Required reading, she told the faculty, her voice unwavering. No more hiding behind "not my classroom." At the next PTA meeting, an older white father raised his hand slowly. "I don't know how to talk to my son about all this," he admitted, eyes low. "But I know I have to, and I'm ready to learn." That one line got quoted again and again. It made its way into the local paper's Sunday editorial. The headline read, "When the Students Became the Teachers." The Stan, Dana, and Daria's self-defense group doubled in size. What began with bruises became a banner. Kay brought her art supplies and made a mural along the gym wall. Fists, yes, but also open hands, stretched wide across the skyline. She titled it, "Hold and Release." Lauren didn't return to school. Rumors swirled private counseling, another school, even a written apology delivered to the office. Dana and Daria never saw it. They weren't waiting for closure. They were building what came after it. One afternoon, Iden installed motion sensors in the back lot just in case. No one asked him to. He just said, "I don't like shadows." And on a windy Thursday, Miss Halpin, the principal who once told them perception was reality, invited Dana and Daria to help draft the new student code of conduct. They didn't say yes right away. They took the weekend to think, not because they were unsure, but because, for the first time, they had the right to choose how their story would be told. On Sunday morning, the twins sat in the sunroom with their father. Steam rose gently from mugs of peppermint tea, the scent soft and familiar. Outside, the city hummed with weekend life horns, dogs barking, wind shaking dry leaves loose. But inside the Caldwell home, it was quiet. Still, Papa Joe turned the local newspaper around so they could reread the headline. "Bronx twins spark change at PS 142. Y'all done something real," he said, his voice slow like honey. "But what matters most now ain't the noise. It's what you do when the crowd quiets." Dana folded her hands. "We're thinking about saying yes to the new code, helping write it." Daria glanced at her sister, then back at their father. "But we don't want it to be decoration. It has to mean something." Papa Joe nodded once. "Then write like it's your legacy." They returned to school on Monday, not as students trying to survive, but as authors of something greater. They sat with Miss Halpern, Kay, Hayden, and two other students. One who'd once laughed behind their backs, the other who'd never dared to speak. Now they all had seats at the same table. The first line they proposed, "We do not tolerate silence in the face of harm." Kay suggested a clause about restorative justice. Iden added one for anonymous reporting through secure channels. Miss Halpin didn't interrupt. She listened. For the first time, the girls felt her hear the full weight of their words. They stayed after, refining the language. Dana spoke about fear. Daria talked about dignity. Kay shared how long it took to trust her voice again. Their sentences became more than policy. Kay became a mirror. That afternoon, they passed the gym. The mural still stood, brighter than ever. A group of sixth graders practiced on the mats. They were clumsy, laughing, falling, rising again. Beside the mats stood a new corkboard. Tacked on it were flyers, quotes, even poems, a community voice, blooming, and just beyond them, written in permanent ink on the far wall, "Self-defense is not just a right, it's a language, and we speak it in unity." Daria reached up and touched it lightly. Dana watched the little ones tumble, wide-eyed and fearless. "That," Dana said, "is what staying looks like." And they kept walking. Together. Not just forward, but upward. Towards something their ancestors had dreamed. Towards something they now had the power to build. The auditorium was packed. Not with students this time, but with parents. Fathers in stiff jackets. Mothers clutching coffee in recycled cups. Some wore curiosity on their faces, others caution. And a few wore something cold as skepticism wrapped in polite smiles. Dana and Daria stood backstage, hidden behind thick velvet curtains, listening to the murmur of conversations ripple through the rows. Kay sat cross-legged near the tech booth, quietly adjusting slides. Hayden triple-checked the projector. The twins weren't nervous. Not anymore. But they were aware. Miss Miss Halpin delivered a brief opening speech highlighting community values, inclusion, and growth. It was safe, soft, expected. Then came the unexpected. The lights dimmed slightly. A short film began to play. Footage of the self-defense sessions. Clips Aiden had edited together. A sixth grader learning to fall without fear. A trans student landing a clean block and smiling like he hadn't in weeks. Dana correcting a stance with calm encouragement. Daria pulling a shy girl gently to her feet. Then the screen faded to black. Words in white appeared. This isn't rebellion. It's repair. When the lights came back on, Dana and Daria stepped forward. No script, no notes, just their presence. Dana spoke first. We didn't come here to fight. We came here to stay. Daria followed. But staying sometimes means drawing lines and showing others how not to cross them. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't have to. The room leaned in. One mother near the back wiped a tear. A father stood slowly and began to clap. Others joined. The sound grew not loud, but steady, respectful. The kind of applause that said, "We hear you now." From backstage, Papa Joe watched, hand pressed to his heart. And in that moment, every whisper that once tried to erase them became the silence that made their message louder. The hallway hadn't changed. Same linoleum floors, same flickering lights, same squeaky lockers that hadn't shut appropriately since the 90 seconds. But something in the air felt different now, like the building itself had exhaled after holding its breath too long. Dana and Daria walked shoulder to shoulder, not as shadows trying to pass unnoticed, but as anchors in a shifting tide. Eyes followed them, but no longer with mockery or menace. Now it was recognition, reverence even, not because they were feared, but because they had become something no hallway had expected them to be, undeniable. The flyers still hung on the walls, slightly crooked, slightly faded. After school self-defense. Come as you are. Leave stronger. Kay was already in the gym, laying out mats. Aiden had fixed the speaker system. There was talk of inviting veterans to teach breathing techniques, possibly even a trauma therapist from Harlem who had offered to volunteer. But today, the twins paused. They looked down that long, once hostile corridor, not with dread, but memory. Every step echoed with what had been endured here. The notes in lockers, the slurs under breath, the isolation, the silence that had weighed more than any fist. And yet, here they were, still walking and still standing. A girl in 6th grade jogged up beside them. Small, brown-skinned, curly hair, frizzed with the morning fog. She didn't say much, just matched their pace. Dana noticed. Daria smiled. They didn't need to say anything. That was the point. Presence was enough now. Later, someone asked them what had changed. Nothing, Dana said. Everything, Daria added. Because it was never just about fighting back. It was about reclaiming space, about refusing to shrink, about building a future where girls who looked like them didn't have to carry armor just to be seen. The hallway was the same, but the way they walked through it, that was the revolution. In the end, this wasn't just a story about two black girls who knew how to fight. It was about what happens when silence is no longer an option, when self-worth steps out from behind fear, when dignity dares to take up space in hallways that weren't built for it. Dana and Daria didn't break the silence. They rewrote its ending. They didn't ask for a stage. They built one, fist by fist, lesson by lesson, ally by ally, not to stand above others, but to lift those who had forgotten how to stand at all. Their story is not rare. That's what makes it so urgent. Because somewhere right now, another kid is sitting in a classroom, too quiet to scream. Another pair of shoes walks through a hallway, hoping not to be noticed. Another whisper waits to be answered. So we ask you now, not just as viewers, but as witnesses, have you ever stayed silent when someone else needed your voice? This isn't the end. Not really. Because the second punch echoes louder than the first, not in violence, but in courage, not in revenge, but in refusal to disappear. If this story stirred something in you, share it. Let someone else feel less alone. Comment below with your truth. Speak for someone who still can't. And if you believe stories like these matter, subscribe to our channel. Walk with us. There are more voices to be heard, more silence to be broken. Because justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers and waits for someone brave enough to answer. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the following videos.